first question talks about transformations. So I'm looking for words. So you're going to tell me what physical things happened, and there is 4 answers I'm looking for on this question. So what does the negative multiplier do to a shape of a parabola? There's a flip. The multiplier number is 5 divided by 2. So what is it? Is it going to go narrow or wide? Narrow or wide? Narrow. Because it is greater than 1. I tried to trick you because I put a fraction there, but that fraction is bigger than 1. 6 to the what direction? Right. And 1 to the which direction? Down. Okay, so that's a question on your test, looking for transformations, and I'm looking for words. Okay, the form here. So on your test, you are going to have the stuff that I wrote on the board. Okay, that's what you're going to have on the test, what I've written on the board. So you're looking at the middle one there. It's called standard form. So when you look at the formula, would you take things opposite, opposite, sames, what? The middle formula. This matches the middle one. Opposite, opposite. So the vertex is opposite, opposite. What is the slope multiplier? -4. So therefore the direction is that it will be flipped down. The axis of symmetry, I'm going to remind you probably 10 more times, and still probably about 5 of you are going to forget. How do you start an equation for the axis of symmetry? X equals. I'm going to remind you, and there's still going to be at least 5 of you that are going to forget. So try not to be that one. And which x value will it cut through? -3. It's going to cut through that x. What's the domain? Always. Don't have to think about it. It goes out and out. Range, so I'm a visual person, so I already have somewhere along the line, I kind of have that in my mind, a little flip. So what is, it has to be in the order, what is the lowest? -infinity to a top height of 10 square bracket. Y-intercept, well, what does a y-intercept mean for us to do? Put the x to a 0. Make x 0, and then you're going to have to do some work. So 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 squared is 9. Then it would get times by -4. So that's a -36. And then I would have to add 10. So -26. And then I'm not asking you for that. So -310 is the vertex. Don't worry, on the test I put grids there so that you can be a little bit better. So we obviously know that it's going to head down like that, but how do we know the movements? What do we do for specific movements? We can do a little over-up pattern. And then what's the normal pattern? 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. But I'm going to have to multiply it by a -4. So instead of going 1, 1, I'm going to go 1 over and 4 down. If I had 2 over, I'm going to go 16 down. What would be the final height of that point if you went from 10 and then you went down 16? -6? This is a pretty narrow, skinny parabola, right? Because of our -4, that makes it even skinnier than normal. Does it look like it would cross this line way down there at -26? That seems reasonable. Okay, so that is worth like 11 points on your test. Okay? Exact same question. You're going to get vertex, slope, direction, axis, domain, range, y-intercept, graph. Okay? Now, this one. So which style of formula does it look like on the board? It would match with the bottom one, general. So what do you do for vertex? -b over 2a. So opposite b would be a +2 over 2 times 1. Equals 1. What do you do with that 1 value? Plug it in. So 1 squared minus 2, 1 minus 3 is okay, so that's the plug-in. Slope. What is the multiplier of the x squared part? That's what we always look for. 1. 1x squared. Which means it would open up. Axis of symmetry. Always start with x equals. And it would cut through the x value of 1. Domain, same. Range, so now are you visualizing it looking like this? So the lowest would be some kind of value, which is what height? And I'm picking -4 because that's the height. Up to infinity. So the y-intercept is us putting a 0 in for x. Not much pink. Aiden, bring some pink under there. Okay, so this is me putting 0 in. But this one is pretty fast because you can really just say nothing, nothing, and then minus 3. Okay, the next question, I've asked you to do it for this one. So it was an x-intercept. So what do you do for x-intercepts? You need to make the y 0. And what is the special method you have for solving an equation like this? Factoring. What multiplies to 3, because it's a simple trinomial, and adds to the 2 part. So 3 times 1. You got to play around with positives and negatives. Okay, so now graphing it. So there's my x-intercepts. There's my y-intercept. There's my vertex. We had all those points. And is it going to make a parabola? Yep. Is the pattern going to go 1, 1? 1, 1. Does it fit 2, 4? 2, 4? Yep. Because the slope was 1, it should follow the basic pattern. Okay, so that question on your test, also worth like 11 points. Same idea. Get me all this info. Other kinds of questions to pay attention to. I could just give you stuff and then I could say, what's the min or max? So you, first of all, if I give you this equation, what are you going to answer right away? Is it a min or is it a max? Max. And what is the max? 10. That's what that would be. If I ask you just, what is the min or max value? And you have to say what it is. Max 10. So looking at this one, what would you have answered? If I say min or max? Min. And the min is -4. Okay. Also, another question you have would be, if I give you the x-intercepts, I'm just giving you the x-intercepts, that's it. Where's the axis of symmetry? Where do you know it's going to be located? Right in the middle of them. Okay, still remembering questions like that. Those are the small questions about this stuff. Got it? Okay, create an equation in general form with x-intercepts of 5 and -7. Can anybody tell me what we would have done to get x-intercepts? Factored. So we would have factored and got those x-intercepts. Can you work backwards then? So if your x-intercept is 5, what was the bracket factor? X minus 5. So those were the factors. Then general form. So looking at the board, it looks like that. I'm thinking I'm just going to FOIL it out. Factoring and foiling are the opposites of each other. So remember, we factored. So to undo it, we FOIL. So x squared plus 7x minus 5x minus 35. Okay, this person is going to lose a partial point for their answer. Y equals. If ever you're saying make an equation, make sure you somehow see an equal sign in there somewhere. Okay, a parabola has a vertex of that and a point of that. So there's a vertex and there's a point. So 1, -6 and 3, 6. That's kind of just a general idea of where they'd be. And I can visualize my parabola would look like that. So I would like you to do this for me. Can you figure out what the pattern movement was? So over, up kind of idea. How much would you have to move to go from a 1x to a 3x? Over 2. How much would you have to move from a height of -6 to a height of 6? 12. So when I was to go over 2, I should have gone up 4. But I went up 12 instead, so what is my multiplier? So I have a 3 slope. Okay, so my slope is 3. And my vertex, I need you to make me an equation now. Using that and that, that's it. You need your vertex and your slope, and you make an equation. So on the board, you should be picking, doesn't matter, the top one or the middle one. So depending on what you pick, you got to pick if you're doing opposite same stuff, opposite opposite stuff. Okay, so here are my 2 acceptable answers, depending on which one you picked. Doesn't matter. You don't write them both, just have one of them, but you might have had this and your partner would have had that, and you both would be good. Okay, and the last one of these. So you should identify a vertex in this chart because your vertex has the symmetry around it. So which one has things going on around it, symmetric? And this is what I'm seeing. The 5 height has a 4, 4 on both sides of it. So the vertex is 0, 5. And what happened on this chart? So from 0 to 1 has moved over 1. And going from 5 to 4, I have moved down 1. So do you have a conclusion about your slope? Negative, down 1. Okay, so I need an equation. it doesn't matter again which form you pick, the top one or the middle one, transformation or standard, just depending on your opposite same stuff. So this one looks tricky because there's no number in there.
So do we just like ignore the 0? Would we get 1.3?
Did you write something like this? Yeah, that's not wrong, but you're most likely going to get this scenario when I write it to you and you have to recognize it, so make sure you can recognize it. But if you wrote me that answer, I'm not going to mark you wrong. So there are some questions on the test where I give you vertex and you have to recognize that there's some zeros in places, so be able to do that. Okay, so if you saw that, would you recognize on a test that there was no H value? The vertex was at 0. Would you recognize on the test the vertex on this one? 6, 0. There was no number, right? So be able to recognize that on the test, okay? Wink, wink. Okay, general to standard, you have 2 questions on your test. One will be a simple trinomial and one will be a complex trinomial. So this one is a complex. So if you can do this one, you can obviously do the other one. Step 1, get that out of there. Okay, this is where people go wrong. I get a lot of people that start to put 64 at the end of this. You're going to be wrong. Why can't I complete the square right now? Because it is not a simple trinomial. You can't do that. So what you're going to do is go -2 and then make a trinomial. So pull the -2 out. Okay, remember what you're doing. This is outside of this squared stuff. So pull it away from that. Pull it away. Okay, ready? -2 times what makes that? X squared. -2 times what makes that? Plus 8x, then trinomial. So what are the things you're doing in your head to get that last number? You got to do something and something, remember? Half squared is a 16. Half squared. What kind of value are you going to put on the teeter-totter to put it back even? -32. See that? This times this was on my teeter-totter. This times this was on. This times this was not on there. So it's going to have to look like a standard form, and you can have that visual on your test. You can look at it and say, well, what does it need to look like at the very end? It needs to look like that. Okay. So think about foiling. What are you going to foil that would make that? So it needs to first make x squared. It needs to times to that and add to that. And if it's going to be the same, it needs to double and square. times is to the end and adds to the middle, but if it's squaring, looks like that. Okay, so we kind of talked about splitting the test up. What did I say there? Friday and Monday. Because Friday you have like a half hour. Can you do that part in half hour? Or do we just do word problems Friday and then the other part Monday and flip that back around? I feel like the word problems would be more doable in the half hour and then the other. You might have to flip that. Yeah. No, nothing tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. So word problems, you're going to have kind of 3 types. So this is one of them, which would be like a revenue style question. Okay, so you're trying to sell baseball caps. 600 caps, $15 each is how you start out. And then you want to get more money. So here's what we're going to do. Revenue equals price per hat times the number of hats. I'm going to write it in words. Does it make sense in world, life, skills? However many hats you sell times their price. That's the money you make. Revenue equals big brackets, big brackets. Okay, what did my hat price start at? 15. What did the amount start at? 600. And then reading. For every $1.50 increase in the price is increasing by $1.50. $1.50 X, because you don't know how many times. Then there will be 30 less hats. Because I don't know how many times I want to make that increase. Like I might go up $1.50 or another $1.50. I don't know. Okay, what's your maneuver now? Foil it out. That's your next maneuver.
The middle one's 450 x squared because it's 2x.
This would be the same x, so think about adding 5 feet plus 2 feet, 7 feet. Right? Versus this one became an x squared because you're timesing feet by feet, making square footage. Yeah. So does that make more sense? Okay. So here's what's going on in the question. I see maximize. That word. What does that word mean to you with maximize? Vertex is a maximize. So how would you find a vertex process with this? Negative b over 2a. So that's a 5, but we're going to hold it there right now. We're going to think about what the 5 is. So the 5 is the x value. So what does it even mean? The change, the number of times you do this. So you're going to go up $1.50, up $1.50, up $1.50, up $1.50, up $1.50. You're going to do that 5 times. That's what you're doing. So, question. What's the price of each hat? What's the price for each hat? Plug it in for just the one bracket, the hat bracket. It was $15, and then you went up $1.50, $1.50, $1.50. 5 times. So that was one question that I asked. What's the hat price? And the other question, what is the highest revenue? So now you do a plug-in, but into this is the plug-in, the whole thing there. So that plug-in of 5. So I asked you 2 questions, so make sure you know where to go for what you're getting asked, okay? Moses, don't you have to leave? Don't you have to leave right now? Let's pretend somebody on their test accidentally plugged in here for the hat price. Would there have been a red flag in the back of your mind saying a $10,000 hat, baseball cap, is probably not a good answer? All right, last question is your area. So we have a rectangular area with one line down the middle so that we're dividing something into 2 sections. So can you see it? Sometimes I've put it along a barn, and if I do, then you just don't do one side. Okay, so now we're going to call those sides lengths and these sides widths, or whatever, either or. Okay, you have 300 yards of fencing to put around. So all of this would add up to 300. So all of it adds to 300. So that's part 1. Part 2. What is the max area? So we're going to have to talk about the area of a rectangle. So this is going to have to be a quadratic because area is squared. Quadratics are x squareds. This is going to be a quadratic, but you can't have stuff going on with 2 different letters. So what's the purpose here now? We're going to substitute. So what's better alone, the L alone or the W alone? L alone is easier. Whatever one's the smaller. So 2L equals 300 minus 3W. Move that over. And divide. Make sure you give all the kids candy, so no one gets mad here. And you can just use 1.5 if you want. So I'm going to substitute that for the L. So now you kind of do a FOIL process there again, but it's just a distribution, not a complete FOIL. So this times this times this. Okay, the goal is, what is something with the max area? Max area. So if I'm thinking, as soon as I hear a word max, vertex stuff. So negative b over 2a starts the vertex stuff. Like you left 300 minus 3W?
Well, and then divided it by 2 afterwards. So it was, I put it in as the first one, 2L equals 300 minus 3 times.
And then somewhere you've divided by 2?
Well, I put it in as like the area equals 300 minus 3W. But it still ended up with 50 at the very end.
Yeah, obviously you get to the right answer, but your process would have been wrong because you were plugging in, you were replacing L with something mathematically equal to 2L. So that's not an exact replacement. That'd be like getting a substitute teacher and somebody from kindergarten coming into class to replace me. That's not kind of the same replacement, right, or whatever. Like I would have probably deducted you some kind of half mark or something, just for, okay. So normally that is what I call the X of the vertex, right? So this is the X value of the vertex, but we don't have X letters anymore. So what's the X letter of ours? W. So we know 50 yards is what the width of this thing would be. So I know that. And the question says, what are the dimensions? So what is the L now as well? So I could go there. Maya, what are you going to ask?
Why is the 150 the B part?
Why is 150 the what part? Because it's the one attached to just like an X. Look at on the formula. What letter has just the X part on it? The B. And then what letter has the X squared part on it? That's a letter A. And there's technically no C letter. So it's again, it's not A-B order. The A is telling you how many x squareds you have. Right? You see it? Okay. What else could I ask you here? I could say, what's the largest area? What could you do to get the area? You could plug 50 into this line. Or, what's another thing you could do right now to get area? 50 times 75. That also would do it as well, like length times width, because you know them both, so you could just times them. Or plug in, they should give you the both same number. So what's the other word problem style on your test? It'd be one where I give you an equation, and I might ask you something about how long does it take for the ball to get to the highest? Or what is the highest height of the ball? Something like that. I think I saw one in your word problems where you were throwing a ball, but the ceiling of your building was only so and so tall. So would your ball hit the ceiling or not? So what are you kind of doing in that situation if you're determining if the ball hits the ceiling or not? Yeah, you're going to find, right, you're going to do your negative b over 2a, plug in. This is always your height part, right? And this would be your time part. And then you would see if the highest height is it below your ceiling? Is it higher than this, what the ceiling would be? You would know if it could hit the ceiling or not, okay? So that's the other word problem style. Also, word problems, can you describe, I'm throwing a ball. What does the y-intercept tell me about me throwing the ball? Where I'm starting my height from. What does this part tell me of the vertex? How long it took to get to the top. This tells me what is the highest height. And what does the x-intercept tell me? How long it takes the ball to go and then hit the ground, right? Do you see it? Ball throws, goes up, hits the ground down there. Okay, so that's another thing about the word problems